Fancy intro music, yeah! Woo! Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel where this morning we're taking a look at Pike versus Jean-Luc Picard, and not necessarily in a who's better type of way, because we'll talk about that a little bit in this video. And there are situations where yes, Pike Moreau Chen are better than Picard Beverly Chen, and then there's situations where Picard Beverly Chen's better than Pike Moreau Chen. Oh my god, why does it work this way? But what we're going to do today is, and we've talked about this quite a bit in live streams, we've actually talked about this for like over a year, but I was looking back at my old videos going, we've never actually broke down how it works. So in this video, we're going to talk about how Pike works as an officer, how Picard works, and what that means for you as you're prepping some loadouts and you're building towards certain builds. Now, we've talked about the whole premise behind, the Picard and the Beverly is that Scopely was basically making the best officer in the game. The best. Now, that best officer is also taking 180 shards. So it's ridiculously hard to get him. Let's just be honest. The difference between Pike and Picard from what I've seen so far is not so grand, even though I have seen more, I wouldn't even say more victories or better results, just slightly improved results overall when it comes to like farming soul traders and stuff. But it's not so wide that Pike is now like useless. In fact, they just kind of complement each other. One's great, one is still great. But Picard and Pike both work in a similar way. And we're talking about Picard's Make It So, which you see right here is 2 times 10%. And that might sound confusing. We'll talk about that here in just a second. I promise you it's not as confusing as it might seem. And then we'll scroll up here to Pike real quick and talk about how Pike works, because he's displayed a little bit differently. Now, I was having a good conversation with Hercule, which is horribly mispronounced. Sorry, buddy. But here's Pike at 260. Now, Pike has got Synergy here, so that doesn't really count. Take him off. He's 2 times 20. I want to make sure that we talk about that difference there, because as we have both of these officers put up on screen, shout out to LCARS as always for having this information available for us to throw up there. Pike is a very unique officer in terms of, Picard is very unique compared to Pike because they work the same way. In terms of their captain's maneuvers, they work, I don't want to say identical, but they are very similar. When synergized, then they become identical. And here's what I mean by that. So if you look at Picard by himself, or let's look at Pike first since we have Pike, and we'll put Pike on the screen. So if you look at Pike, he is 2 times 20%. Now let's start with that part, because for a long time, people were really confused by how Pike worked because it was never really displayed in a way that matched the math. And you'll see the math here in a minute. We'll break down exactly how like Pike Moreau Chen works, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense now. But it never really displayed correctly. Essentially, you have what is an issue with a lot of officers in the game. And when I mean a lot, it actually is a lot. And just to name some, we've got Carol, Claw, I mentioned him in a previous video, like Cadet Kirk, Burnham. All their abilities are twice as strong as they're actually displayed on their officer abilities. And this could be one of those things where it happens twice, where it happens in terms of the buff happens before the battle and then activates in the battle. And I don't want to go through all those officers because I don't want Scopely to fix them. It's a good thing. So we'll leave it alone, especially because this is exactly how Pike works. But Picard works the same way, where it is a 2 times an amount. Now here's a way that Pike is inferior to Picard, and that is synergy. Now, when you synergize Pike, which you can see I've got him synergized here on the ship, he's now 2 times 60, which would be 120, and that's an important number. Remember it. We'll come back to it. But if you were to put another command officer next to Pike, he only gets 20% synergy. So instead of a 40% making 2 times 60, it would only be 20%, which would be 2 times 40. That does make a difference. So now you got to make sure that you are using Moreau, which is that famous combo that we've been using for 2 years now. Picard is very unique in that every type that you would pair him with, all the types, and let's start looking at Picard now. So if you were to use the Make It So, he is 50% synergy for all types. So you've got all three, whether it's command, engineering, or science. He's basically the only officer that works like this, gets him to 2 times 60, which now makes him equal to Pike. Now, when they don't have that equalization, when they don't have synergy, there is a difference. And a great example of that difference is, if you remember when we talked about doing the math of Harrison and using Pike with Harrison to increase that shield penetration in that phase 2 of your battle log, and we'll show up this very handy graphic that Kalu made, because I didn't want to make it. He made it for me. Didn't need to. You can see that you have a difference in terms of how much you're actually getting to the shields based on whether you're using Pike by himself and Picard by himself. So that 20% versus 40% makes a difference. Just a tier 1 Harrison is getting 12% more shield penetration in that phase 2 of battle than with Picard, because Pike has got a higher number. And then you get tier 2, you basically have max shield penetration. Tier 3, you do have max. Tier 4 is where Picard finally gets Harrison to having max. So it does make a difference when you are working with them solo, where Pike is actually superior. Now let's talk about how the math of these two officers works. All right, so sorry about that, had a little cough. Let's talk about this officer set, and we're going to use Pike Moreau because it's the one I'm familiar with. Now remember, if you were to use Picard Beverly Chen, how it works on another officer is the exact same. And that's kind of what we want to hit on in this video, is now to jump into the math and throw it up on the screen so that you can see it in action, get an understanding of exactly how it works. So essentially, and we've mentioned this in videos, what you're going to be doing is taking away 96% of your opponent's energy damage. But the real important thing is, how exactly does that work mathematically? Well, it's pretty easy to show. Now, I did a couple logs with my Tala to make it really fun earlier today, and you see here, almost 2 hours ago, here's 2 level 30 federations. Now, the second one I did with just Pike. So I took off Moreau and I took off Chen. So there's now no damage reduction except for singular research that we'll talk about when we get into the math portion of this. So you see we take a significant amount of damage, almost 9,000 on that first shot, and we don't win, we die. Whereas with the exact same ship, a Tala, now going against another level 30, 200,000 ship, we win handily. Not only do we win, you can't see it. Let me get out the way. Look at this. Handily win. Easy W. Big W's, man. And that's because of the effect of Chen when mixed with the synergy of the captain's ability of both Picard and Pike. You'll get the same result in terms of the damage that we're going to look at. So you look at the other one, it was about 9,000. Here's 487. So now let's break down how this math works. So you've got to start with the actual numbers of where we're getting down to. So we're going to start with Chen. So Chen is 30% reduction. But how do we build on top of that? So if we're going to build our multipliers, remember we always start with our base. So base is 1. And now we have to get on top of base with the Pike maneuvers. Remember, Pike is supposed to be increasing that with the captain's ability. Now keep in mind, Picard works the same way. So we're interchangeable how we're describing this. So now is where that 120 becomes very, very important. And while now having it labeled to correctly show 2 times 60, what does that actually translate to? So that makes it into 120%. Now, if we're going to take that and put it into a mathematical formula, like we are here on the screen, that would be 1.2. And then now we have our multipliers, and now we would add any research on top of that. And by research, there's one research that applies here, and I will jump into our research menu to show you exactly which one it is real quick. It is at the very, very beginning of your combat tree, called Battle Tactics. It is a 30% research, and you start this and you get this done at a very low level in the game. This is something that you do almost immediately, and is a 30% reduction against hostiles, not players, hostiles. So now let's do the math. So if we have 30 times 2.2 plus 30, you get 96. Now 30 times 2.2 gives you 66. So add then 30 on top and you get 96%. And now we take the total damage that the ship would have done, this being the hostile in this case, and we multiply that by that 9.6, and then we'll get, or we divide it rather by that 9.6, and we'll get that 4% remaining is, I guess, yeah, you multiply by 0.96. I'm making this video at 4 in the morning, lots to do. So that's how you would get your math. It looks right on the screen, okay? Get off my back, don't touch me. But anyway, it's right on the screen. So you would take 30 times 2.2 plus 30, and that gives you your 96% for the reduction that you're getting with Chen on the map. And that is what you're getting with Picard and Beverly. Now, how they work, it is slightly different. Now, the bonus of Moreau, especially when you get Moreau to about tier 3, is with her special ability right here, basically going to make sure that mitigation is maxed no matter what. So you're going to take very little damage. And the Beverly maneuver is a little, I mean, it works in a similar way. It's slightly different. And this is going to really depend on a couple of things, like one, how much defensive stats you're stacking, determine what that really does. But in general, this is how Pike and Picard work from a captain's maneuver standpoint. This is the math, and it's really not as complicated as you probably thought it was. And now you can use that to calculate how Pike and Picard will affect attack maneuvers. Remember, it does not work on Stan, Cadet Scotty, any of those, and that's intentional. But hopefully this video helps you. If it did, please smash that like button. Hit subscribe, join the channel if you want support with a little bit of the greeny greens, and if not, ask questions down below if you want to know how this worked. And if you appreciated learning, hey, let us know that as well. Live long and prosper. Stay safe out there, Space Cowboys. We'll catch you in the next one. Deuces, that's me. An even better outro than the intro. Yeah! Woo!